Hi, sixth graders. This is Mrs. Gall. Today we're going to talk about percent proportion. Go ahead and open up to a fresh page in your notebook, put this title at the top, and press play when you're ready to continue. We're going to start with the definition of percent. Percent is a ratio comparing a number to 100%. Pause if you need more time to write that down. The percent proportion is a ratio comparing a part and a whole to a percent. This is what that looks like. The part over the whole equals the percent over 100. Make sure you have everything from this slide written down. Press play when you're ready to continue. This is very important. Part over whole equals percent over 100, so you really want to make sure you have that in your notebook, and we're even going to add a little bit more to it. So make sure it's a nice size and it's somewhere where it's easy to spot. This is an example of a problem you can expect. 45 is 60% of what number? Let's kind of break this down and see how do we apply this and put it into our percent proportion to solve. So we have a few pieces here. We're going to be looking for the words is and of, and we wrote those up here right next to the important words that they're connected to. Is the signal word that shows us where our part is in the problem. Of is the signal word that's telling us where the whole is located in the problem. So a lot of times we'll just tell you to remember is over of equals percent over 100. So let's go ahead and look for those different pieces in this problem. Look for our word is. Actually, let's look for our percent first. That one's easier to spot because there's a percent symbol. So anytime we're looking for the percent in a problem, you're always just looking for the percentage sign. That will be an indicator that we have a percent. The percent is always going to go over 100. So we always know we'll have a 100 on the right-hand side on the bottom. And then if we have a percent, we're going to place it over 100. Now let's go and look for that word is. We see 45 next to the word is. That's a signal that the 45 is our part. So we're going to fill that in where the part goes in our setup. Lastly, we're looking for that word of. The end of our sentence says of what number. That means we do not know what the number is. That's our goal, is to figure out that missing piece. In order to solve this, we're going to use cross products, which you should be familiar from the proportions lesson. You're going to look for the diagonal that has a number on either side. This diagonal has a number on either side. You're going to multiply those two together, 45 times 100, and set it equal to the other diagonal multiplied together, 60 times our unknown, x. You're now going to solve by multiplying and then solving it like a one-step equation. 45 times 100 is 4,500. 60 times x is the same thing as 60x. In order to get x by itself, we now divide both sides by 60. $4,500 divided by 60 gives us our answer for x, which is 75. That means 45 is 60% of 75. Does that make sense? Yes, because 60% is a little bit larger than 50%, which is half, and 45 is a little bit more than halfway to 75, so that makes sense. Let's go on and just look at some other examples. Again, if you do not have this written in your notebook, this is probably the most important part of this skill, so please write down is over of equals percent over 100. That's the setup we need to use in order to solve these percent problems. 12 is 75% of what number? So we're going to set up our two rates equal to one another, and we always know that a 100 goes below the second rate as the denominator. Next, let's look for the percent. We're looking for a percentage sign. I see a percentage sign right here. That means our percent is 75, so we're going to fill that in where the percent goes. Now I'm going to look for the words is or of. At the start of my problem, I see 12 is. That's my part. That's going to go where the is goes up top on the left. That means I'm missing the of, and I can see that I'm missing the of by looking at the end of the question of what number. That means my whole is missing. That's where my variable goes. Now I solve using cross products. 12 times 100 equals 75 times x, which is the same thing as 75x. I know 12 times 100 is 1200. So now I need to divide both sides by 75 to figure out what x equals. When I divide both sides by 75, I get x is equal to 16. That means 12 is 75% of 16. Does that make sense? Yes, I know 75% is 3/4 of the way to a number, and 12 is 3/4 of 16. Let's look at one where a different part is missing. So let's try 12 is what percent of 32? We have the same setup. We always know 100 is going to go on the bottom right-hand side. Now let's look at what we have and what we're missing. When I go to look for my percent, I notice I don't see a percentage sign, and I see this, what percent? That means we're missing the percent if we don't see that percentage sign and we see what percent. That means we should have an is, a part, and an of, a whole. So let's look for those. 12 is, there's my part, it's going to go up on the left. Next I see at the end of my sentence of 32. That's my whole because I see that word of. We still solve using cross products. Look for the diagonal that has a number on either side, 12 times 100. Equals my other diagonal multiplied together, 32 times x, which is the same thing as 32x. I multiply 12 times 100 to get 1200. Set it equal to 32x. It's a one-step equation. To solve for x, we divide both sides by 32. When we divide both sides by 32, we get 37.5 for x. That means 12 is 37.5% of 32. Now we're going to look at some where the order just starts to get mixed up a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to continue to look for our signal words to help us, and we're going to continue using the setup is over of equals percent over 100. In this example, what percent of 5 is 12? I notice I'm missing a percent. I don't see a percentage sign, and my problem starts out by saying, what percent? That's a good indicator that we are missing the percentage. That's going to be our unknown. Next, I'm going to pay close attention to the words and the numbers that follow them. I see of 5 shows up in my problem. That's an indicator that 5 is our whole. It needs to go where the whole goes, where this of is at. Oh, my marker doesn't want to work. There it goes. Then I see is 12. That means my 12 is my part because that word is signaling to that. Now this looks a little bit weird. The top number is larger than the bottom number. Is that okay? Yes, sometimes that will happen. Don't let that trick you into thinking you are wrong. You used your signal words to help you set that up. We then solve using cross products. 12 times 100, which is 1200, equals 5 times x, which is 5x. We divide both sides by 5 to get our answer. 1200 divided by 5 gives us 240. That means 240% of 5 is 12. And that makes sense because 12 is a lot larger than 5, so that makes sense that it would go over 100%. Why don't you try setting this one up on your own? Look for the signals, the words, and the symbols to help you set it up properly. Press play when you're ready to see me walk through the answer. You should always have a 100 on the right-hand side at the bottom. I also notice I have a percent, 24, so that goes over 100. I see at the start of my problem I have what is. That means my is would be missing. Then at the end of our problem we see of 54. That's signaling our whole. Now we use cross products to solve. 54 times 24 equals 100 times x. I take 54 times 24 and I get 1,296, and I divide that by 100 to get 12.96. Let's see if that answer makes sense. That means 12.96 is 24% of 54. That makes sense because 24% is about a fourth of 54, and 12.96 would be about a fourth of 54. Okay, this one you're going to notice that we have a missing word. So let's walk through this. Find 35% of 32. You're going to see enough to help us get through this problem even though we are missing a keyword. So right off the bat, I see that we have a percent, 35. So we're going to fill that in where our percent goes. And then I see another number, I see of 32. That's telling us we have our whole. So we're going to go ahead and place that where the whole goes, which means although we don't see the word is, it's telling us to find 35% of 32, and the is the only piece that we don't have, so that's our missing piece. Go ahead and solve using cross products. 32 times 35, I got 1,120. Divide that by your last number, 100, you get 11.2. That means 11.2 is 35% of 32. Last one. What number is 11.4% of 330? Why don't you try this one on your own and press play when you're ready to see the answer. We have a percent, 11.4. We're going to go ahead and fill that in where the percent goes. We know 100 always goes under the percent, and then the end of my problem says of 330. That's our whole. That means our is missing. We solve using cross products, 330 times 11.4, and we divide by our last number, 100. That gives us an answer of 37.62. 37 and 62 hundredths. That means 37 and 62 hundredths is 11.4% of 33. That is our lesson for today. Check in with your teacher if you have any questions.